fell, and they went to their rooms. The old man was asleep in the next room, and she could hear his ragged breathing. Suddenly the snow crunched again outside, right under the girl's window, and she heard the same intermittent, moaning breathing, as if someone had just run a fucking marathon and was out of breath. The girl covered her head with the blanket, almost dying of fright. A minute passed, and, crunching snow, an unseen guest moved to the window in the old man's room. Immediately, she heard the old man's sleepy breathing change, and he, too, began panting and wheezing, tossing and turning in his bed. She thought she should wake him up, but the guest outside the window also breathed almost in unison with the old man, and she was afraid to get out from under the covers. She did not know how long it lasted, and eventually fell asleep. The first thing she did in the morning, when dawn broke the night, was go out to the bathroom and examine the snow. No sign of footsteps. With a sigh of relief, she went in for breakfast. The old man was even more gloomy than yesterday. He told her that he had dreamed about his brother again, this time angry and determined to take him down by force. I fought as hard as I could, but he still knocked me down and dragged me away by force, the old man sighed. Here at last the girl dared to tell what she had heard. When the grandfather heard it, he fell into a state of depression. "You'd better wake me up before he overpowers me." It was definitely him. I remember him wheezing awfully when he was dying of tuberculosis. Now I'm a dead man. And indeed, not a week later, the old man came down with pneumonia and never recovered. He was buried next to his brother. And she had to move in with another family. There is a belief, Diakakehe, the coffin night. This is how villages call the evening of the day when someone died or someone is buried. It is believed that on such days spirits come from the other side to accompany the soul of the deceased to the other world, so the border between the visible and invisible is thinner. Those who are not invited may come out. That is why it is taboo to make lots of noise in the street, have fun and in other ways to attract attention. Otherwise, very undesirable fellows might gather to make noise. For large settlements and cities, where every day someone croaks, this notion naturally loses its meaning. But in the villages even today this belief is very widespread. In one village, an old man died who had 100 relatives. Naturally, the grieving relatives all came to the village to prepare a decent funeral. The small children also came and, of course, quickly managed to make friends with each other. It was summer, so in the evening the new friends organized outdoor games. They were children after all, why should they sit in stuffy houses and look at the sullen faces of people? Of course, there was a lot of shouting, laughter and hooting and hollering. Some of the older people shouted at them, "Dahai, don't fucking frolic like that," but most of the kids were left to their own devices. When the tossing and turning got boring, the kids started playing hide and seek in the yard. There was a kid about 10 years old who led the way. The children disappeared into all sorts of nooks and crannies, and he started looking for them. He quickly found someone, and then wandered into the winter house, which was empty for the summertime and used as a warehouse. Even though it was summer nights, it was gloomy inside. The guy peeked into the rooms, nada. Already on his way out, he noticed a large closet rack with closed doors. Walking with a poker face past the closet, he jerked it open, but inside were just winter clothes, jackets, coats, etc. He suspected that children might be behind them, so he started probing with his hands. Running his hand up the sleeve of a large coat, he suddenly felt something cold. He looked up and saw that there was a knife glittering behind the sleeve of a coat. He was surprised and started touching further. It turned out that the knife was held by someone's hand, cold as ice. The boy pushed back the coat and saw that behind him was hiding a man of no less than 2 meters, looking down at him. The half-light made it impossible to see his face, but the stinky smell hit him in the nose. He screamed in a bad voice, and the boy rushed out of the house and told the children everything. They went into the house in a huddle and checked the closet. Nothing but clothes. They laughed at the boy, saying he was a coward, and continued to play. The next one was led by another boy. Everyone, as usual, hid, and the boy went to search. After some wandering, he entered the stable in the far corner of the manor. Since the windows in the barn were small, there wasn't much light either. But the boy could clearly see a man hiding in the corner in the shadows. "That's it, I found you," the boy declared. "Come out." The man held his hand to his mouth without moving, as if playfully suggesting silence, and began to chuckle softly, as if he were having a lot of fun. The boy approached him with the words, "Come out," I said, and saw up close that it wasn't his fucking friend, but some bald, naked little man with disproportionately high, almost on his forehead, glistening round eyes, a chubby, lumpy belly, and a tongue hanging out of his mouth down to his neck. The kid shit himself, literally, that is, and was out on the street in a flash. When the kid ran to his parents in hysterics and told them everything, the adults forbade the kids from playing outside for the next few days. The fun was over. This is usually accompanied by the moral: every activity has its time, but since we are not moralists, we can deduce a lesson that you should not wander into dark alleys when there is a dead man lying in the next house. They say that in villages, palaces and in the woods, you can often hear various sounds and voices from nowhere, the source of which is impossible to determine. It's not considered to be particularly creepy. You never know what you might hear. But there are also creepy cases. A certain Anon lived in a Yakut village in one summer, having bathed to excess, got pneumonia. He was sick for a long time and finally recovered. Of course, he was on sick leave, so he did not work and laid at home during the day when no one was around. It should be noted that their house was on the outskirts of the village near the edge of the forest, and so, on a clear sunny day, feeling fit, the man decided to take a walk outside. Breathing fresh air, he heard strange sharp sounds. At first, he could not understand where they were coming from, but since he did not see anything noisy nearby, he decided that the sounds were coming from the forest. He went to the edge, and indeed, the sounds became louder and clearer. Curious, Anon went further to see what was going on there. He thought maybe there was some construction going on in the woods. The sound was very close, but still nothing was visible, so the man went deeper into the woods. He finally determined what it sounded like. The sound was exactly as if wooden planks were being thrown at each other, quite common to hear during the construction of a wooden house. But it was somehow too rhythmic and constantly seemed to drift away, no matter how far one walked. He had already gone quite deep into the woods, and the sound hitting bricks, realizing that there was something fishy going on there, especially since gradually the source of the sound had moved somewhere down, as if it was coming from a glade or from under the ground altogether. But there was no glade in this area. Nevertheless, the man walked forward, hoping that it was just his hearing playing a trick on him. And he walked until he came across an old, abandoned cemetery from the pre-Soviet times. The location of the sound of the boards was clearly defined, from under the ground beneath the ancient graves. The man got goosebumps and rushed away. That night he told everything to his relatives and fell into angst, for it is widely known in Yakutia that the noise of wooden planks, whether in dreams or in hallucinations, is not good for the one who hears them. Associations with the creation of a coffin, that is, the patient will soon die. And so, it turned out, the next morning the pneumonia worsened again. And a couple of days later the man left this world. My father once told me a story that happened to him personally. The story has to do with the spirit of the hunt, by Anai. My father and his friends decided to go out hunting in the deep woods. As they drove the UAZ to their deployment point, a couple of young guys started drinking vodka. Passing by the lake, one of them started to badmouth the lake in every possible way. Like, what a puddle, no fish obviously. He was quickly shut up. Soon they drove quite deep into the woods, and getting out of the car, the second of the drunkards started picking on the place where they were going to hunt. He, too, was quickly shut up. Holding a ridiculous grudge mixed with the alcohol they had drunk, the two friends decided to hunt separately from the others. The first went into the woods to supposedly get the biggest game, while the second, remembering the lake, went fishing. My dad and the others didn't find any game. Everyone was very disappointed. A fair amount of time passed. Soon a shot from a rifle came from the woods. The hunters rejoiced, thinking that at least the young ones were smiling with hunting luck. After a while there came one more shot from the lake. They started joking. They said, "Grief is a fisherman." Hunters were sitting, waiting for the young ones, but they still were not coming. The evening came. Have decided that young men have lost the way. The guys had drunk a substantial amount of vodka after all. Soon the local news reported 2 suicides. Both had their heads blown off. That's why the people say, "Man Bible." Yes, Bayana was offended. I have an interest in modern urban legends. In general, living in Yakutsk, I had heard several quite interesting stories that had a public resonance and were discussed in the media. It was in the 90s, and a rumor was circulating in the city, that at night in the city, in the darkness of the night, there wanders a certain man. either a madman or a wild man or a werewolf. There were theories that it was a man suffering from lycanthropy, a rare psychological disorder. The story goes like this: at night, on rare occasions, passers-by were attacked by a man running on all fours and biting, some trying to drag them under the house. In Yakutsk, houses are built on stilts, because the foundations collapse because of the permafrost, and under the house you can safely walk, piss, fuck, hide from sight, rape, hide dead bodies, litter, etc. Later that lycanthrope disappeared, and since the early 2000s nobody remembered these stories. But recently there have been stories on the net that something big and hairy, wolf-like, wanders around the Republican Medical Center at night. I, for example, think that the story from the 90s and the story about the strange beast-like man near the medical center are interconnected. For example, the story from the Yakutsk Psychological Forum. I get creepy when I remember, on January 25th this year between 5 and 6 in the morning near the medical center I saw something creepy. It was a man who looked like a wolf. Of course everyone will consider it a fiction or some kind of disorder, but that's what I really saw. I saw how this creature was huge compared to the man. I first thought it was a tall man in a black trench jacket, but when approached I clearly understood that it was not a man. It easily jumped over the distance of about 5 meters. I distinctly know that a person in a Yakut winter at this time cannot jump so far. I was overcome with panic, and the smell was so scary, I even did not have time to do anything. I only remember how I was in the apartment and stood in the kitchen with a gun. I didn't want to tell my wife at first. I was afraid she would think something was wrong with me, but then I calmed down and decided to tell her what was happening. My wife was frightened, and for good reason. She firmly and resolutely asked me if I was on drugs. I wanted to go to the police station, but what can I tell them? That I saw a wolf with 2 legs or a man who looks like a wolf. Everyone knows that there are no werewolves. I do not believe it either. But I am scared of what happened. It was creepy, that is the only thing I know for sure. I wanted to write in the X-File forum, but they are all made-up stories. Hopefully someone will help shine a light as to what happened. Lately I feel a strange weakness, dizziness and an unconscious sense of fear. Basically, everyone started laughing and suggesting to go to a therapist, but I found a few more witnesses. How true their words are, I do not know, but internet folklore on that, and the internet folklore, some believe, some do not. My 2 sons also saw the creature jump over our fence. That was about 3 years ago. They saw it clearly up close, too. I believe them. By the way, we also live near the med center. I would tell a lot of interesting things about it, but I do not have time now. I'll come back later. I would even agree to take a lie detector. And to the author, you can relax. What you saw is not a figment of a sick imagination. Next. At the same time, dogs began to disappear in our area. For example, our sheepdog, a huge male dog, who stood on a chain, also was taken away. Our neighbors had a Caucasian. They tried to snatch him, too, but he did not let them. We also found several dead dogs. 2 corpses in terrible condition were found near us in a pile of crates, a dog's head on the road, and a few other such cases. I contacted the police station and the disappearances started to slow down. But in the nature of its work, I usually woke up at 5 a.m. at 5:30, like fucking clockwork, began a cacophony of howling dogs. And the howling always started on one side and ended in the area of empty houses. Our new dog was smarter. She, as soon as the howling began, immediately hid in the doghouse and lay there shivering until 6 a.m. A year ago, everything just stopped at once, and now it is quiet and peaceful. I have never talked about it, because I was afraid, and who would believe it? But since there is such a topic, I thought might as well. It was 1995, I was still in the 10th grade at school, and one night, secretly without my parents' knowledge, I went out on the looked down. It was the beginning of the white nights, everything was clearly visible. I see a dog running, a large mongrel, gray color, but right under my balcony. It suddenly stopped, looked around, and jumped up on